What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode.
This is deep dish, right?
Yeah, well, let's get deep.
So I'm going deep on both sides.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Deep Dish Conversations. I'm your host and creator, Jerome Moore, and we all know all of our guests are amazing, and it's even more amazing when we have Nashville natives, that kind of grew up around the same area and everything on the show. So we have Christiane Buggs, the chair of the MNPS School Board of Education, and she does a lot more, United Way, teacher, all the mother, activist, leader, she did ask me about drinks in. Nah, I'm just joking. But now, welcome. How you been?
I've been okay.
She asked me, "Do we really get to eat the pizza?" Yeah, of course. That's why people come. I think really, it ain't for me.
Looks delicious.
So look, let's get straight into it. Education is a big deal, right? It affects all of our community here in Nashville, right?
It affects every profession.
Every profession, right? And just so happenly, it seems like in education, there are harmful disparities that affect people that look like me and you, our youth. Specifically here in Nashville, when it comes to suspension, expulsions, getting into the higher achievement programs, what is going on, especially from your lens, being right in the thick of things. Talk to us. Let's get deep, straight into it.
Okay, you better be ready for a lot of nuance, a lot of data, and then just
we need the facts.
I give it to you. So in my daytime role, I am the manager of literacy partnerships with the United Way. All right, so to take us back, 2017, the then Mayor Barry really wanted to focus on the pre-K space. What does it look like as soon as a child is born until they're about 5 or 6? What does it look like to make sure that they have supports? Mm-hmm. Because 30% of our students come into Nashville schools already one full grade level behind. So before they've opened a book with us, before they've gotten on a bus, eaten the little pizza from the cafeteria, they're already a full grade level behind. So what can we do to impact that? But then when you really break the data down, when you look at black or brown boys, 80% of our students come into first grade, a grade level behind. What's happening in our community that we're really not resourcing students, right? And so that has been blowing my mind as I have this dual role of being on the board and really looking at strategy.
And you have a black son.
And I have a 3-year-old son. And so there was this nervousness because, of course, I'm a co-parent. It's just me and him. He sees his dad on the weekends. My baby is a statistic in a number of ways. How do I make sure to support him, right? Mm-hmm. And so I always have these things going on in my mind as I make decisions with the school board because I know what our students and families are facing even before they come to us. So there's so much that I can say when you ask that question because part of it is resourcing our communities, making sure that parents feel empowered, supported, making sure that they know the standards like, when do you start teaching your child colors?
Right.
Letters. When should they know how to spell their name?
Right.
If nicknames are okay, should they be able to spell those also? Do they need to know their home phone number and address at 5 or at 7? Just all those different standards that they have to meet.
So I'm gonna throw something at you.
Sure.
Oh, there she go. We got that. She was worried about
I'm
messing up. We got it. She's human, everybody. But no, I got to throw this at you because this is the predicament I'm in now. I have a son, Jameson. He'll be 2.
Okay.
Be 2. I am a product of MNPS public schools, like yourself. Mm-hmm. With all this data, now I'm older, mature. I see what's going on. I understand, and what I see is, the public school system here in Nashville is not meant or built for my sons to succeed.
Sure.
Like other kids of different race and color, ethnicities, right? What would you say to a parent like myself and others here in Nashville that see this data, may also be products of, MNPS or public schools in different cities and states that they come from, what would you say to them to encourage them to still give MNPS schools a chance?
Oh, great question. So much. So first I would say, there's been this big push to see Black lives as mattering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if Black lives matter in adulthood, when we see disparities in the way that we're treated, Black lives should matter in childhood.
Right.
And it's not that schools are good because of the type of student or the type of family that attends. It's the type of resources that we put into those schools. So I'll give you an example. There's a school here called Laughlin. It's in East Nashville. At one point, it was in the bottom 10% of the state. It had, students that were middle to low income. And I mean, you're talking 90% free or reduced lunch. Right now, it's in the bottom 10%, the top 5% of the state in performance. All it took was like 6 to 8 families that decided this is going to be our neighborhood school. Not only are we going to put our students here, but we're going to be a human resource for them.
Right.
They started a PTO, they started fundraising, they started better supporting the principal, they asked questions of teachers, they elevated the entire school in a number of ways simply because they were engaged. What I've seen happen, particularly with predominantly Black schools or in predominantly Black neighborhoods, everyone that could opt out, opted out. So I think about myself. I grew up in North Nashville, should have been zoned to Whites Creek. I think about the 3 other people on my street or in my, close to my street that all went with me to MLK. Instead of us going to Whites Creek, how much would we have impacted that class of 2003 if our parents, with their fundraising capability, the idea that they were knowledgeable about the system and understood the questions they should be asking, they offered supports to our teachers, they pushed us to be better, they gave us ACT prep programming and over the weekends and the summers. If that kind of support would have been more consistent at Whites Creek, how different would Whites Creek's class of 2003 have been? And so we don't see ourselves in the community as part of these systems, but we are.
Right.
Because when we opt out and we say, yeah, I love Black people, I love being Black, but my little Black child can't be with those other little Black children. We're not only sending a message to our children that says white is right or that there's something wrong or that anti-Blackness is a thing we should accept, but we also pull resources from the community that we live in that we claim to love. And so I've been trying to spread the message to everyone, choose your zone school. You can make it just as good as any magnet, as any charter, as any other optional school, and you can certainly make it as good as any private school because the $12,000 a year that we get for MNPS schools does not compare to the $30,000 a year that USN spends or the $35,000 a year that Ensworth spends.
Right.
Not to mention some of the other private schools in our area that we think are doing well, but who are still putting out students that are graduating with at lower rates, or that are graduating having taken the ACT and only earning a 15 or 16. I mean, there's just a lot of because it is a public system. There's a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication about what public schools do.
Right.
And the last thing that I'll say, my son goes to Jones. Jones is a school that serves all 5 homeless shelters in Nashville. But when I say my baby is thriving, he already knows everything he needs to know for first grade, and it's not me.
Right.
I mean, we do a little bit of something, but it is a great school that has been under-supported. It's been under-resourced. But the more that I'm there to ask questions, to speak with his peers, or to speak with the parents of his peers, the more that we can build a PTO, because they haven't had a PTO in at least 6 years.
Wow.
The entire Pearl Cone cluster doesn't have a PTO. And so schools that are able to fundraise, like some of our local charter schools that are able to fundraise at great rates, they're seeing an increase in outcomes, but we should be seeing that same increase. We should be doing that same level of fundraising. I know I just do a lot.
No. This is strong. This is good. I'm gonna keep throwing them back.
Sure.
You spoke about the parents that are already in these communities, right?
Sure.
I was on for White Creek too. Oh, damn. We missing out. Sorry, White Creek. There's a lot of movement here in Nashville, right? 100 people moving here a day. We seeing our neighborhoods transform. Which can be looked at as good or bad, right?
Sure.
You can be a different type of gentrifier. You don't have to be the typical, as Will Acuff says, it's an uppercase and a lowercase G of gentrifiers, right? And I gotta say this: the uppercase G is the one that hope I get this right, Will. The uppercase G is the one that blocks themselves off from the community that they just are coming
Buys
into.
a home in the community, but then doesn't want to send a child to that school.
Let's get into it. And so you already know I'm going. So how can, because I see these folks, especially if they non people of color folks, as potential allies to our public school system. What would you say to encourage them that, like, if you're gonna move on 28th into a tall and skinny, or if you're gonna move into East Nashville or these other parts that have been historically Black, right? And have, public schools that you could send your child to, send them there. What would you tell those people that's moving in and may not be from here, may not understand the neglect, may not understand the harm that has been done systemically to our public schools?
So what I realized the last couple of years being on the school board is that it's all about messaging, that we don't do a good job of messaging in public schools because we often don't have enough funding to get communications professionals. But we've got to shift the way that we talk about schools. And that's what I've been telling everyone around me. Stop talking negatively about a school, especially if you haven't been in there. And then if you have been in there and you've seen a need, think about the root of the problem, not the symptom that you see. So if you see children acting inappropriately or maybe not meeting the level of academic success that you think they should be meeting, think about why they didn't get there. Because just like I say, every parent wants what's best for their child. Every child wants to be the best in the room. There's not a single child that wakes up and says, you know what, man, I'm going to be stupid today.
Right, I'm going to be mediocre.
I'm
Right.
not going to do well. I just want
Right.
to fail. Not a single person does that, let
Right.
alone children. We just haven't resourced them. So I think about some of our majority community members, some of our white neighbors, especially gentrifiers, who sometimes just don't know. You need to change their hearts and minds. So sometimes it's just having a conversation with them to explain the history of Nashville,
Right.
to explain how diversity and how optional schools have kind of shifted the way we talk about, view, and even insert our children into public schools. But then I also want to remind people that if you're going to call yourself an ally, I need you to be a true ally, and it is going to be uncomfortable. Because if African Americans are going to be uncomfortable every single day, then your level of allyship needs to match our uncomfortability. You saying to me that you bought this house because you love the neighborhood, but you don't want your daughter to be the only white child in a school full of black children, welcome to our world.
Right.
Do you really think your baby is going to be harmed by seeing people who don't look like them?
Right.
Do you really think that you, with all the resources that you bring, having purchased a home in cash, while community members who have lived there for centuries, literally centuries, their families have lived in the
Generations,
same home,
yeah.
that they can't afford to buy that home now, do you really think that they're going to do harm to you or your family?
Right.
It was good enough for you to live there. It should be good enough for you to educate your child there. And I mean, so much of education, especially students who are earning 30s and 36s on the ACT, or students who are learning the code at 7 years old, most of that happens outside of the school day anyway, because we know what we want to expose our individual children to. I love science and I love the arts. My son is going to always be involved in arts and science. I love athletics. He's gonna play sports year round. So whatever I give to him is going to be outside of the school day anyway. So if there's something that you feel like he's missing, not only can you support other students in your community by inserting that into the school, but you can also still give your child access to that later.
Right. Being a native Nashville,
A native from out north.
native from out north, excuse
Bado.
me, the big Embado. That's how
Bado
we
to be
say
specific.
it. Yeah.
Bordeaux.
Bordeaux. And being the chair of the school board here in Nashville, how do you navigate that space? Knowing how we are, our people, you should, hey Christian, why you ain't doing this? What's going on with this? It's like, everything was on your shoulders. How do you navigate that? Because I know you seeing people at Kroger's, you seeing people at Publix, whatever you seeing people, and people is automatically feel more comfortable approaching you or maybe speaking on you than they would maybe somebody else.
Sure. A couple different things. So I really do just kind of stay off of social media. Like Instagram is the only place where I consistently just kind of, sit. But that's because I've curated my followers and my following in a way that I feel comfortable, where I just see a bunch of silly stuff all day. It's my way to escape. I'm not on there a whole lot though, but everything else, I just delete it off of my phone. So I don't see the negative tweets. I don't see the Facebook posts. I just don't see when people are attacking me. It makes me feel better, and it took that level of anxiety off. But the other thing is better yet, I always say being on the school board has been the best personal and professional development that I could have ever not asked for. I was 29 when I decided I was going to run for the school board. At 30, I became the youngest school board member in MNPS history. At 35, I became the youngest school board chair in history. With that, though, I had to grow up quickly. I had to mature more quickly than I think I was ready for. So I have to offer people grace. Every single day, just like I offered my students grace when I was a teacher, I have to offer adults grace. And I realized that so many of us didn't have the experience with public education that we should have, that they are just looking for someone to blame because they're angry. And they should be angry. But in the back of their minds, I know that they don't blame me at 36 for centuries of inequity. They don't blame me for MMPS that was established in 1963. They couldn't possibly blame me for everything that's happened to them, their aunts, uncles, their grandparents, and now their children.
Right.
But they are looking for me to do something better.
Right.
And in my mind, I know what issues I plan to tackle. I know what the landscape of education looks like at the city, at the local, the city, and the state level. I know what my parameters are, what I can change and what I can't. But I also know that Black people can't fix racism. We
Right.
can try to make shifts. We can improve the hearts and minds of people to see everyone as human. We can humanize each other. Like you said earlier, like humanizing is such an important thing in this role.
Right.
Because I've got to have people see me as human, but I've also got to have people see children as human.
Right.
Often we look at them as data points. And so when I mesh all that together, I just think about grace. That's the word of my tenure.
Right.
Gotta offer people grace even if they don't offer it to me. And the other side of this is that for every one person that has something negative to say, they typically don't say it to me.
Right.
They might tweet it. They'll be keyboard warriors. But I give my phone number, my email address out to everyone. Whenever someone asks to meet, I almost always readily meet. So it's kind of like, when social media first became a thing, that whole at me or dat me phrase, people want to be able to shout into the wind and be upset, and they have that right.
Right.
But unless they come to me about it, I shouldn't internalize it. I just
Right.
can't, because I've just seen this quote a number of times that, the way people view you is not your problem.
Right.
It's just not.
Right.
It's how you interact with them, how you
Right.
support them, how you treat them. And I know I treat people right. I know I struggle at night to go to sleep, making sure that I've done everything I could that day to support young people in my community.
What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, creator and host of Deep Dish Conversations. And I know y'all enjoying this episode, but just real quickly, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button and hit that notification so you can be notified when we drop new episodes and interviews. All right? I appreciate all love and support. And let's get back to this episode. And we know historically that women in general, especially Black women, hasn't got the same type of opportunities. Or the same type of rewards from the same type of opportunities that men that could be in the same position doing the same thing. Being 29, being the youngest school board member, then being the youngest chair of the school board. How have you navigated? Let's talk about. Are you trying to stop me? I got some more face. Dang, man.
It really was in your
It was
and
really
I was
my
like,
bad.
oh, yeah.
Is it off now?
Oh, yeah, it was just a dot or two.
It was like a dot or two? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to start over there. All right. Dang, messing me up. Like, yeah, I see him over there sitting. What's going on?
You were trying to signal?
Okay. What was that? Oh, okay. I'm starting over. So, being a woman, being a Black woman, and understanding that, women haven't always been treated fairly. Still to this day, don't still get the same opportunities as men. What have been some of the challenges, do you feel, just being based off your gender that you face that maybe, your other gender counterparts, men specifically, may not have had to deal with if they was in your role?
Where do I even start? I mean, many of us grow up hearing that you have to work twice as hard to get half as much, and I always push back against that. I really always struggle with that. To give you some context, my grandfather was a state legislator. He was a politician. My grandmother was an educator and a math educator. My uncle is very much a mirror image of my grandfather. I am nothing like my grandmother, right? Like they wore suits every day. My grandmother wore stockings. I mean, her hair was always done. My uncle is the same way, suited and booted every single day. I was out here a wild child. I was bartending. I mean, I was just living life. And then when I felt this calling to really support young people better and then to use whatever soft skills I had to run for the school board, I slowly started to realize that there's some times when I just have to be uncomfortable because I need people to see my position when they don't want to see me. So my position will get me in the room. The way I look will often make people want to ignore me, so I've got to come prepared with data. I've got to make sure that I have rehearsed and articulated everything I want to say. I got to make sure I'm hitting points that are not seeped in my feelings or how you feel about me or what you think. It's going to be about pure data.
Right.
And data has got to drive my decision. So it's very hard often. Like I just told you, I just came from the state legislature where I had to testify and sit in front of the State House of Representatives. There were a number of white men up there. There were a number of white women up there. There were a handful of black men, but not a single black woman. So there was no one that I could look to and say, hey, sis, you see me, I'm going to draw power from you. I had to draw that from myself and from the community that I knew I was representing, right? And so I just had to be there prepared. And I had to stand my ground and say, these are the 3 reasons why this won't work. What you're going to do, because it's been tested and it has failed every single time. If you do it again, you're going to test it on my children, and my children are going to be harmed. And being able to say that shifted the way that they voted. And I've got to remember that in times when I get frustrated, that there are going to be times when people want to brush me off. They don't want to let me in the door. They want to have these little microaggressions where they let the door hit me, or they don't want to open it for me, but they opened it for every woman before them. Or, they don't want to scoot over to make room for me. I'll stand in the back of the room because you're still going to have to call my name. Because you're still going to need my signature because of the position that I'm in. But to that point, I also want to say that's another reason why I'm not running for another term. I feel myself starting to appreciate the power, and I never wanted to become power hungry. Like, I like that people actually return my phone calls because they do need my signature, but that shouldn't be the reason that or the way that I get things done. So I experience microaggressions in a number of ways, a number of times every day, but I just have to make sure that I'm always way more prepared than someone thinks I'm going to be.
What's next for you? If you're not gonna,
I'm on a paper chase after this. Once I'm giving my all to the school board for the next 2.5 years. After that, I'm chasing money. I am going after consulting. I'm working the stock market. I'm trying to, not flip houses because I really want to keep investing in houses in North Nashville. But I have set myself on fire way too long to keep other people warm. I'm going to support my local school and my, the Pearl-Combe cluster by supporting it through a PTO. But I'm not running for office again. Y'all can have this.
What done it for you? What broke the camel's back?
A number of things. I think maybe if I had to quantify it into 3 main things that happened to me, right? First was, with the pandemic, everyone shifted their attention to schools and school boards because finally people realized, like, oh my gosh, teachers are invaluable. Having safe school buildings is something we should prioritize. Oh my gosh, we hadn't resourced school. They don't even have enough computers for every baby. And so they shifted their attention to us without thinking about the nuance, without thinking about what it was we hadn't historically gotten so that our students needed a level setting, but then also what our teachers had not gotten, right? And so as education became this new sexy thing, people got real rude. I get paid $13,000 a year to be a school board member. Not to say that I'm doing it for the money, but the sheer amount of time it takes to return emails, to strategize, to advocate, just the reading and the writing that I have to do is intense. But people,
the excellence that it takes.
It really does. I mean, it's nonstop. I'm always tired, right? And so it's like as they shifted, people became more rude and more dismissive, and that I just don't have the temperament to maintain that, right? But then the other thing is, when I first ran for the school board, there were people sitting outside of my home trying to intimidate me, trying to prove that I didn't live in North Nashville like I said I lived. I mean, and I was bartending at the time. I'm working at Tennessee State during the day, campaigning all afternoon, working at weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? Just trying to make ends meet because I made so little. And to have people sit outside my home was intimidating. But then the people that started it or the people that supported it and pushed it, those people are now being elevated as experts in education, and that's just hard for me to watch. My pride, my ego, my sense of self just can't keep taking that hit that someone that did so much harm to me personally is professionally a colleague now, and that people are looking to them as experts. And it's like that's the nature of public education. People don't see educators as experts. They think that anybody can do it. They think, well, anybody can just pick up the book and teach them. I'm like, well, I really had to get 2 different degrees to make sure I understood how to teach students about systems of equations and how to make sure that I'm supporting their social emotional development while I do it. I had to learn how to level text for different students because they're all in the 7th grade, but some are reading at a 3rd grade level, some are new Americans so they don't even speak English, and then some are ready to be moved on to an 8th grade level at the beginning of the year. It's like people don't see educators as experts, and that
Right.
frustrated me. And then I think lastly, just the conflict of interest with money. You know, the fact that, again, I'm making $13,000 a year to do something that prevents me from getting a lot of the contracts or getting the kind of work that I would love to do, because those jobs work with MNPS. And
Right.
people can say a whole lot of stuff about me. They can say that I party, that I bartend, or whatever it is that they want to say,
Right.
but you can never say that I'm going to mismanage money. You can never say I'm going to be and put myself in a conflict of interest when it comes to funding.
Right.
I'll be broke before I do that. And so I'm tired of being poor. I want to make money. My colleagues are making six figures.
Right.
I need to be too.
I know you gotta get up out of here.
To go pick up that
yeah,
little baby.
I
It's
know you gotta
okay.
get up out of here. So I'm gonna end it with this. What does, in your perspective, educational justice mean for Nashville?
If it had to be one word, it would be resourcing. I remember with the last director we had, I don't care what anyone says, the thing that started his dismissal or his downfall in this city was because he tried to shift equity measures, and no one wanted to listen to it. No one wanted to support it. So if you're familiar with Title I funding, Title I is their federal dollars, that come down to cities, to school systems, to better support students who are socially, economically disadvantaged, whose families make below a certain amount of money. Well, you had schools that at one point were Title I schools, but gentrification switch that. So Laughlin, that was once sitting at, like I said, 75, 85, 90% free or reduced lunch, became 12% free or reduced lunch. But they were still getting about $100,000 worth of that Title I funding.
Right.
And not to pick on Laughlin, but that's just one easy example I offer. He was trying to pull that money back and offer it to schools that were neediest. So instead of having any school that was at 50% free or reduced lunch, instead of them all getting the same amount of money, he wanted to shift more funding to schools that were at 75% free or reduced lunch or higher.
Right.
Interestingly enough, that would have been all the predominantly black or brown schools in Nashville. Every single one is at 75% free or reduced lunch.
Right.
So as soon as we wanted to start shifting dollars, parents said, well, hold on, why does equity mean that I have to lose something? Well, that's the definition of equity. We don't want to say it in that way, but
Right.
that means that those who have historically had resources,
Right.
many times that they really didn't deserve, and I shouldn't say deserve, but that they didn't qualify for based on guidelines,
Right.
now need to be shifted to schools and his people who historically had not had it but needed it.
Right.
And instead of us saying, well, you know what, that's a good measure, that's a good thing for us to do, there was outrage. And then when I went to different communities and said, hey, I know you have a privilege in a certain way, so you can keep your kids out of an under-resourced school like a Pearl Cone or a Whites Creek that has the reputation that's negative, even though the school is doing well.
Right.
You have that privilege, but there are so many families who don't. Can you please speak up for this? And there was just silence.
And that's where allyship is tested. If you say you're an ally of black and brown folks, people, communities, this is your opportunity.
But the other side of that, though, that we often don't talk about when we speak on equity, is that there is a level of privilege that is outside of your race.
Right.
So even though I might be low income, and even though I have a child and I'm a single person, I still have education. I have 3 degrees. There's a
Right.
certain level of privilege that comes with that.
Right.
And so I've got to swallow that privilege and make sure that I better use my privilege to support students in my community and in my area.
Right.
So there are people who are minorities who
Right.
don't use their privilege, or at least don't recognize their privilege, and don't recognize that whatever choice or decision they make may very well be harmful to the child next to them or the family next to them.
Right. Well, look, we won't have to do a part 2 because this wasn't enough. But I appreciate your time.
If you had one more question for me, one more thought you want me to share, what might it be?
Critical race theory. and I was gonna go into, but I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot. What is that gonna look like now in that? Well, Tennessee we know, but what is that gonna look like in Nashville now? Is it a way or alternative way to still implement some of those critical things that we should be learning in our schools about the history of what happened in this country to particular people? What does that look like now?
So much, but if I could condense it, I would say, first, we don't even teach critical race theory. Critical race theory is a way of viewing policies, and it's taught to L1 lawyers, students that are
Right.
in law school. So students who are full-on adults because they've had to at least earn an undergraduate degree, and now they're in law school for now a first or second year. So you're a level 1 or level 2 law student. You're learning about how these policies that you have to memorize, these state codes that are law, how that was shaped and impacted by race. It makes them think about just race and theory, even misogyny. I mean, just the different types of bigotry that are out there that have impacted the policies that they'll be supporting or uplifting in different ways, right? We don't teach that to 6-year-olds.
Right.
We're literally teaching babies how to read and write.
Right.
So yes, when I'm teaching you how to read and write, I want to teach you factual history.
Right.
I want to teach you to think critically. The pushback that we always get via email is that you have parents that are white. They have white children who are 7 or 8, and they come home upset that someone white in history did something bad, and now they feel bad. I question that, but I also want to make sure that I'm not being a perpetuator of nonsense by questioning a child's thoughts or feelings. But
Right.
if that is the case, we want young people to struggle. We want them to have to think critically about
Right.
what they believe and feel instead of blindly accepting their privilege and thinking everyone has that same privilege.
Right.
So I'll give you a very controversial example. So when we think about Heathcliff Huxtable, we can love the Huxtables. We can love the Cosby Show. But we can also look at Bill Cosby and things that he was alleged to do and all of the proof that there was when he flat out said that he drugged women. We can think that is disgusting.
Right.
So I can love the thing that he did and still not support the person the things that he did or the person that he was, right?
Right.
We want to have to struggle with that. But
Right.
for whatever reason, America that is majority white seems to want to push back against that because they've never, as a majority, had to reconcile feelings.
Right.
They've never had to look at an icon like George Washington and say, that man raped and pillaged people.
Right.
That man didn't have wooden teeth. He knocked out the teeth of slaves and put them in his own mouth. It's like
Right.
you can love some parts of a historical figure or of a hero and then deplore other parts
I
of
want
them.
to pick and choose.
And heaven forbid we all have to struggle with that. We have to
Right.
think critically.
Right.
So there's so much more I can say, but I hope that at least gave you some.
But no, and that's why, for me, platforms like this and being intentional and calling those things out is so important. And we all have to call them out. White, black, brown, yellow, green. If you
Female, male, non-binary,
yeah,
anything.
whatever you identify as is a human being.
Yep.
We all need to call it out because we all affected by it,
Right.
whether you want to admit it or not, on different levels and spectrums, right? But we all affected by it. But we all must call it out if we want to move civilization forward.
Definitely. Definitely.
Just speaking on just a country or city, just the whole civilization of human beings. And I think we're seeing that more, but we got to keep putting pressure on that. That's why every single day, like, I'm putting pressure on it. Like, it's no passes given, because I think we didn't gave it too many passes and ignored it and just said, oh, well, okay, I'm just going to say something. Nah, we all got to speak out. And especially our privileged folks. You have to you speak out. If you're out, speak out, right? And we're going to end there, but I appreciate your time. Thank you for everybody checking this out. Part 2 is coming. You know what I'm saying? Part 2 with more pizza and more Christian. And I appreciate you. Thank you.
No, thank you for the invitation.
We out.